between 70 and 85 million people. That is how many human beings the Second World War killed. Soldiers in frozen fields, families pulled from burning buildings, children whose names were written down by no one. A number so large the mind cannot hold it whole, so it breaks it into pieces. This city, this family, this child, and even in pieces, it is too much. Now hold one other number. 13. 13 minutes. That is the entire distance between the world that produced those deaths and a world where none of it happened. On the night of November 8th, 1939, 68 days into the war, before France had fallen, before the deportations had begun, before the orders that became the Holocaust had been formally issued, a bomb went off inside a Munich beer hall. It destroyed the pillar behind the lectern. It brought the ceiling down. It killed 7 people and injured 63 more. Adolf Hitler had left the building 13 minutes earlier. He left because fog had grounded his plane, and he needed to catch a train. The fog. That is the entire distance. And the person who built the mechanism that came within 13 minutes of ending it was not a general, was not a government, was not an army or an intelligence service or a resistance movement with resources and handlers and safe houses. His name was Georg Elser. He was a carpenter.
He had never read a book on military strategy. He had no rank, no money, no organization behind him. No one on earth knew what he was doing. He worked with his hands for a living. Cabinets, clock housings, whatever the job required. He built the bomb himself. He stole the explosives himself. He spent 35 nights alone in that building after it closed, on his knees in the dark, chiseling stone one blow at a time, timed to the sound of a passing tram so no one above him heard the work, until the hiding place was ready. He came closer to stopping the Second World War than every army that tried. He was shot dead 3 weeks before Germany surrendered. Specifically, deliberately, so he could not survive to be celebrated. And for 60 years after that, the country he tried to save did not speak his name. You are about to find out what that silence cost. This channel exists for the record the world keeps deciding it is not ready to carry. Everything that follows is documented. Every word. And the reason Georg Elser's name was kept from you is the same reason this is the most unsettling story you will hear today. Because it does not ask what governments failed to do. It asks what you are waiting for. Subscribe now, because that question does not end when this video does. It has only just started.
The night of November 8th, 1939. Georg Elser is standing at the Swiss border when the guards stop him. He's 36 years old, below average height. He has the hands of a man who has used them his entire life, calloused across the palm, scarred at the knuckle, the fingertips carrying the particular staining of someone who builds things for a living. In his coat pocket, a postcard of the Burger Bräukeller, detonator parts, a sketch. They take him to Munich, then Berlin. The Gestapo interrogates him for days, not hours, days. They use torture, sodium amytal injections. Heinrich Himmler himself, head of the SS, the most powerful police apparatus in human history, kicks Elser in the ribs during one session. Walter Schellenberg, one of the Reich's senior intelligence officers, oversees hypnosis sessions. He tells them from the first hour he acted alone. They do not believe him. Not because his story has gaps, it has none. When they ask him to draw the device from memory, his hands produce 5 technical diagrams, precise, mechanically sophisticated, detailed to a degree that makes the engineers brought in to verify them go quiet over the drawing.
The Gestapo later puts his bomb design in their own training manuals. The man who tried to kill the Fuhrer is now teaching the Fuhrer's secret police how to build a better weapon. They keep looking for the organization, because believing him means accepting something the Reich cannot survive accepting. That a factory worker from a Swabian village had spent 35 nights inside their most symbolically significant building, and they had not detected him. That he had placed a device 5 feet from Adolf Hitler. That the most feared security apparatus in the world had not been breached or defeated. It had been walked through, in the dark, by a man with a flashlight and a chisel. The Gestapo's own files confirm the physical evidence before he speaks another word. His knees are destroyed. The skin is gone. The bone beneath has bruised through from months on that stone floor. They cross-reference the damage against the pillar. The body has kept the record, even when his mouth said nothing. Eventually, they stop looking for the organization. They put him in a cell and close a file on a network that never existed, leaving open a different problem entirely. What do you do with a man the entire framework of who is allowed to be dangerous has no category for? They had no category for him. The framework that governed what resistance was supposed to look like, who gets to act, what kind of person history opens its doors for, had no shelf for Georg Elser. What it did with him in the years that followed is where this story stops being about a bomb.
Go back before the border guards, before Himmler's boot, before the diagrams. Go back to August 1939. Georg Elser arrives in Munich. He rents a room. He begins going to the Burgerbräu Keller for dinner each evening, sitting at a table alone, eating slowly, watching. He learns the rhythms of the building the way a carpenter learns the grain of a piece of wood. When the kitchen closes, how long after the last light goes out before the silence in the walls changes from evening to something else entirely. When the hall closes each night around 10:30, he does not leave. He has found a storage room where he can fold himself into the dark and wait, completely still, not breathing loudly, until the last footstep fades. Then he crosses to the pillar. It stands directly behind the lectern where Hitler speaks every year on this date. Elser had measured it on a visit months earlier, gone home, designed the compartment to fit before he ever touched the stone. The first task is the wood cladding. He needs an access panel that can be replaced perfectly after each night's work, indistinguishable from the surrounding paneling when the building opens in the morning. He works with a handsaw in fractions of a millimeter. The panel alone takes 3 nights. Then the stone. He cannot make noise. The hall above him, the walls carrying sound, the city going quiet after midnight. He identifies the trams, the specific rumble as each one passes on the street outside, and he times every single blow to that sound. He waits in total stillness. The tram comes, he strikes once with the chisel. He waits. He listens to the building settle. The next tram comes, he strikes once. Every grain of stone dust goes into a bag. Every fragment into a suitcase he carries out before dawn through a side exit, returning again that evening, night after night, the work accumulating in silence below a building that had no idea. One night, a waiter finds him inside as the building is opening. Elser looks at him and says he forgot something. The waiter leaves. That night, Elser goes back. When the cavity is finished, he installs the mechanism,
A dual-watch timer he has machined himself, custom-built, tested in an orchard outside the city weeks before he touched the pillar. He lines the housing with cork, piece by piece, until the clockwork is muffled to nothing. He seals the panel. He stands back. Nothing shows. On November 6th, 63 hours and 20 minutes before the scheduled detonation, he sets the timer. He returns the following night. He stands with his ear against the wood and his palm flat against the panel. The tick moves through his hand. He holds still for a moment. Then he picks up his coat and walks to the border, carrying in his palm the heartbeat of the only thing in the world that knew what he had done. He walked to the border with that tick still in his hand. What happened in the building after he left? And what happened to every life caught in the space between that moment and the fog over Munich airport is where 13 minutes gets its full weight. After the interrogations, after the diagrams, after Himmler's boot and the sodium amytal and the hypnosis sessions, after the Gestapo confirmed Georg Elser had acted alone and filed the confirmation in a drawer it would not open again, the Reich had a problem with no clean answer. They could not execute him. Hitler had a specific use for Georg Elser, a role reserved for a world where Germany had won the war. There would be a trial, a great public spectacle in London, in the ruins of the British capital, broadcast to a conquered Europe. Georg Elser would stand in that courtroom and testify that British intelligence had funded and organized the Burgerbräu Keller bombing. The confession would be whatever the Gestapo needed it to be by then. It did not matter that it was a lie. One more lie in a London show trial was not a problem that kept anyone in Berlin awake. So they put Georg Elser in the special prisoners wing at Sachsenhausen and kept him. The wing held people the Reich could neither display nor discard. The former Prime Minister of France, the former Chancellor of Austria, the son of Joseph Stalin, Georg Elser, carpenter, Swabia. His cell was large, a woodworking bench against one wall, extra food rations, a guard who came each morning to take him to the barber for a shave. The other prisoners noticed. Martin Niemöller was in that camp, the Lutheran pastor, the theologian, the man who would later write the most famous poem about the cost of staying silent while others were taken. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak. Niemöller looked at Elser's cell, the bench, the food, the guards comfortable around him, and he drew his conclusion. He announced publicly after the war that Georg Elser had been a Nazi agent, that the bombing was staged, that Hitler had arranged his own near miss to prove divine protection and harden German resolve. He said it on multiple occasions. When Elser's mother wrote asking him to stop, Niemöller refused to retract a single word. He was wrong. Comprehensively, documentably, unambiguously wrong. Decades of forensic historical work have confirmed what Elser's own destroyed knees confirmed in 1939. But Niemöller was credible. He was trusted. He had suffered under the same regime he was now accusing Elser of serving. So the accusation held. Georg Elser sat at his bench and built things with his hands, while the man who wrote the poem about the cost of silence used his voice to bury the one person who had refused to stay silent when it mattered most. The war ran its full length outside a window Georg Elser could not see from. He sat at that bench while everything he had tried to stop ran its full catastrophic length through the world outside, while Niemöller's voice did the work the Gestapo file had started. And somewhere in that cell, In those 5 years of wood shavings and clock parts and morning shaves, the weight of what 13 minutes had allowed accumulated into something the next movement cannot hold back. Do not let the number move past you. 13 minutes. Write it down if you need to. Hitler left the Burgerbräu Keller at 9:07 p.m. The bomb fired at 9:20 p.m. The pillar ceased to exist. The ceiling came down through the exact space where he had been standing. 7 people died in the room he had just left. 13 minutes. Now fill them. When that bomb fired on November 8, 1939, Germany had been at war for 68 days. France had not fallen. The United States was at peace. The Soviet Union was a German ally. The machinery of what the war would become, the full industrial architecture of it, was not yet built. What is not disputed is the downstream. 70 to 85 million people died in the war that followed that evening. 6 million Jewish people were murdered. Entire cities were reduced to rubble and the specific silence that follows the end of everything a place used to be. Every single one of those deaths, every name on every memorial on every continent, downstream of decisions made by the man who caught the train. Georg Elser, sitting in his cell at Sachsenhausen, did not know the shape of what 13 minutes had allowed. He knew the bomb fired. They told him in the charges. He knew the mechanism had done exactly what he built it to do, at exactly the moment, with exactly the precision his hands had put into it over 35 nights on a cold floor. His eyes moved to the window he could not see out of. The fog was not his variable. That is the thing that does not leave when you sit with this story long enough, not the failure, the precision of everything that was not failure, the mechanism that fired correctly, the calculation that was right, the 35 nights that produced exactly what 35 nights were supposed to produce, meeting the one thing outside any human being's ability to account for: weather. 13 minutes and a fog report. That is the hinge the entire 20th century turned on. Not a battle, not a treaty, not a decision made by anyone with the power to make it. A weather report over Munich Airport on the evening of November 8th, 1939. The fog came down and the train left, and 85 million deaths followed. Georg Elser sat in his cell and did not know the size of what 13 minutes had allowed. What the world did when it finally had to face the size of it and had to decide where to put the man who had come closest is the part of the story that costs the most to look at directly. After the war, Germany needed a resistance narrative. It needed one fast. The question the world was asking, did anyone inside Germany try to stop what happened, required an answer the new German state could stand on, an answer that fit the shape of the country it was trying to become. The answer it chose was Klaus von Stauffenberg, an aristocrat, a Wehrmacht colonel, a man who had served the regime through the early years, decorated, promoted, loyal. A man who in 1939, during the invasion of Poland, wrote in a letter that the inhabitants were an unbelievable rabble who would only be comfortable under the knout. A man who married in a steel military helmet and honeymooned in fascist Italy. He turned against the regime in 1944, when the war was already catastrophically lost, when Germany was being bombed from both sides, when the calculation for any rational officer had shifted from stopping what was coming to surviving what had already arrived. Stauffenberg got everything. The films, the monuments, the streets named after him, the curriculum chapter in every German school,
The Tom Cruise film in 2008, Valkyrie, seen by millions who walked out knowing his name and had never heard of Georg Elser. Stauffenberg deserved recognition. He risked his life. He acted. He paid for it with a firing squad in a Berlin courtyard at 12:10 a.m. on July 21st, 1944.
But look at what the comparison requires everyone not to make. Stauffenberg moved in 1944. With a staff officer's resources, with a military conspiracy behind him, after 5 years of evidence had accumulated to the level that moves men of his class to act, after the Nout letter, after the steel-helmeted honeymoon, after everything the early years had shown him, and he had chosen anyway. Georg Elser moved in 1938, before the war, before France fell, before a single deportation train had run, before any of the evidence that eventually moved the established order had arrived. He moved alone. With stolen explosives and a clock mechanism he machined himself, and 35 nights on a stone floor and destroyed knees as his only credential. Stauffenberg's bomb, placed inside Hitler's own conference room with the full weight of a Wehrmacht conspiracy behind it, killed 4 people in the wrong part of the room and left Hitler walking out with burst eardrums and shredded trousers. Georg Elser's bomb took the roof off the room where Hitler had been standing. The post-war resistance narrative had no shelf for this comparison, because a carpenter who figures it out first, who acts without waiting for the established order to arrive at the same conclusion, does not confirm that resistance came from within the legitimate hierarchy. It demolishes it. As late as 1998, 53 years after Georg Elser was shot dead at Dachau, there was no memorial to him anywhere in Germany. Not a plaque, not a street, not a sentence in a classroom. Stauffenberg's memorial had been standing in Berlin for decades. The wrong kind of hero stays forgotten for exactly as long as the people who need him forgotten remain the ones deciding what gets remembered. 53 years of silence in the country he tried to save. The only place the silence ever truly broke, the only place Georg Elser was ever fully present during those years, was in a cell, at a bench, with his hands doing the only thing in the world that still belonged entirely to him. Go to the cell. Special prisoners wing at Sachsenhausen, larger than a standard cell. A woodworking bench along one wall. Tools, materials the guards replenish without being asked. A window that does not face anything he can use. Before Munich, before the 35 nights, before any of it, Georg Elser worked in a clock factory in a small town on the shore of Lake Constance. He made housings for wall clocks and table clocks. His hands learned clockwork the way they learned wood, from the inside, through the specific resistance each material gives back to fingers that know what they are asking for. The gear teeth, the escapement, the patience required to calibrate a mechanism that has to keep true time for years without anyone opening it again. In the cell, he builds a clock. Not a bomb, not a weapon, not anything that moves toward a detonation. A clock. The man who constructed a timing device so precise it fired 35 nights after he set it, who lined his mechanism with cork, cut piece by piece until the tick was inaudible from 3 feet away, sits in his cell and builds something that measures the passage of time he cannot use. Outside that cell, time is doing exactly what he tried to stop it from doing. France falls. The deportations begin. The camps surrounding Sachsenhausen fill. Cities he has never visited and never will are reduced to stone and ash by air raids he cannot hear from his bench. The full catastrophic length of the war he tried to prevent is running through a world he cannot see from his window. He does not know any of this. He knows the bomb fired. He knows the mechanism did exactly what he built it to do. The fog was not his variable. His hands move over the gear teeth. He fits the escapement, calibrates the tolerance, works until the mechanism keeps true time, not approximately, not adequately, but true. The way his hands have always worked. The way they worked on cabinet joints in Königsbronn, on clock housings in Meersburg, on the cork-lined cavity of a structural pillar in a Munich beer hall on 35 consecutive nights while the building slept around him. The clock ticks. Outside, the war runs. Inside, Georg Elser listens to what his hands have made and does not stop working. On April 9th, 1945, they come to the cell. Germany will surrender in 23 days. He does not know that. He stands up from the bench. His hands hang open at his sides. He does not look at the clock. He walks out. He walked out and did not come back. 23 days before the war he built his life around preventing finally ended. The clock stayed on the bench. What it was measuring, and what those 23 days cost, and what 35 nights cost, and what 13 minutes cost, lands now. And it does not land cleanly.
Georg Elser wrote 5 words in his Gestapo confession. Ich habe den Krieg verhindern wollen. I wanted to prevent the war. Not, I wanted to be remembered. Not anything except those 5 words and what they required of his body for 35 nights on a stone floor. Germany put them on a postage stamp in 2003, 64 years after he wrote them. Now, hold what the world did with those 5 words in the time between. Martin Niemöller, the pastor, the prisoner, the man whose poem the world has quoted for 80 years, looked at Georg Elser's comfortable cell and his woodworking bench and called him a Nazi plant. Refused to retract it when Elser's mother asked him to. The man who wrote "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak," who was remembered today precisely because he eventually found his voice, because he looked at the cost of silence and named it for the world. Looked at the one man who had acted first and earliest and most precisely and alone, and kept his mouth shut. Because Georg Elser was a factory worker, a cabinet maker, a man who had no rank and no institution and no place in the hierarchy of who was permitted to be dangerous and right at the same time.
Stauffenberg gets the film. Niemöller gets the poem. The curriculum gets the aristocrats and the colonels and the pastors. Georg Elser gets a postage stamp in 2003, a monument in 2011, and no confirmed grave, because the man whose hands were steady enough to build a mechanism that fired 35 nights after he said it has no stone with his name on it anywhere on Earth. He is buried somewhere in Dachau, unmarked. 23 days before the war that killed between 70 and 85 million people had the decency to end. And here's the question this story leaves. Not as a closing thought, as a weight you are going to carry out of this room. Georg Elser looked at 1938 and saw 1945.
He did not wait for the evidence to accumulate to the level that moves institutions, did not wait for the established order to arrive at his conclusion, did not wait for permission from the hierarchy that was itself the problem, did not wait for the curriculum to make a shelf for him or the film to cast someone with his name. He saw what was in front of him. He got on his knees in the dark. He built the mechanism. And then the fog came down over Munich airport, and the train left 13 minutes early, and the bomb fired into a room that was already empty. And the war ran its full length, and the world looked at what Georg Elser had done and decided his 5 words were worth a postage stamp.
After 64 years, you have spent the last 25 minutes with a man who saw it coming and acted alone, and came within 13 minutes and paid with his life, and was called a Nazi plant by the man who wrote the poem about not speaking. You have been inside the 35 nights. You have felt the tick move through his palm. You have stood at the window he could not see out of. You know what the fog cost. You know what the silence after it cost. And the question that is sitting in your chest right now, the one you cannot put down, is not about Georg Elser. It never was. There is a story in this archive about another night. One person. One decision. Something the world had spent 1,000 years building, ended by the choice one human being made alone in a room with no one watching. The weight is the same weight you are carrying right now. That story is already here. So is everything else this archive has recovered that the world decided it was not ready to hold. You know where to find it.